What if everything you believe about your home, your sanctuary, is a carefully constructed illusion? What if the unsettling creaks in the night, the flickering lights, the feeling of being watched aren't just ghosts, but something far worse, something real, hiding in plain sight, waiting for you? Tonight, I'm going to tell you a story that will make you question the very foundation of your own four walls, a story that shattered my reality. My name is Alex, and for a long time I was convinced my new home was haunted. I'm not a superstitious person. I've always been a man of logic, a firm believer in what I can see and touch, in data and quantifiable facts. Ghosts, spirits, things that go bump in the night, they belonged in movies, not in my meticulously ordered life. My career in tech was built on control, on understanding every variable, on solving tangible problems. And then I bought this house. It was a charming old place, a classic Victorian on a quiet, tree-lined street in a small, idyllic town in upstate New York. I'd always dreamed of owning a piece of history, a place with character, a retreat from the relentless pace of modern life. This one, with its grand architecture, sprawling front yard, and towering oak trees, seemed perfect. It felt like a fresh start, a sanctuary where I could finally unwind, find the peace I craved after years of a demanding corporate grind. I poured my life savings into it, envisioning quiet evenings on the porch, laughter filling the rooms, a serene future unfolding. When I first moved in about a year ago, everything was exactly what I'd hoped for. The air was crisp, the neighbors were friendly, and the profound silence, after years of city noise, was a welcome relief. It was perfect. But that silence didn't last. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly, like the opening act of a slow-burn horror film. The kind of things you try to explain away, rationalizing them until the rational explanations simply vanish, leaving only a chilling void. It began with the lights, flickering, sometimes dimming to a faint glow, sometimes outright shutting off for a few unsettling seconds before snapping back on, brighter than before. Old wiring, I told myself. It's an old house, it's just settling. Then came the doors, creaking open on their own when there wasn't a draft, or gently swinging shut even when they'd been propped open with heavy doorstops. Settling, I reasoned. Old wood. Every house has its quirks, I reassured myself, clinging to logic. But then, the sounds began. Soft footsteps echoing from the upstairs hallway when I was absolutely the only one home, chillingly distinct. The faint, melodic sound of a child humming a lullaby from the empty hallway, a tune I didn't recognize, yet felt ancient. These weren't the sounds of an old house settling. These were specific, unsettling, and increasingly frequent, becoming bolder. One night, I woke up to a bone-chilling cold in my bedroom, despite the heating running full blast, my breath pluming in the air. I pulled the covers tighter, blaming a faulty thermostat, though I just had it serviced. But then I heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible whispering, as if someone was speaking right outside my bedroom door, just beyond the thin barrier of wood and paint. I lay there, heart pounding, straining to hear, every nerve alert. Was it wind? The house settling? My imagination playing cruel tricks on me in the dead of night? I finally threw off the covers, grabbed my phone for a flashlight, its beam a fragile shield, and crept to the door. I flung it open, bathing the hallway in a harsh beam of light. Nothing. Just profound silence. But that night, something inside me shifted. A cold dread settled in my stomach, a knot of undeniable fear. I couldn't deny it anymore. There was something in that house. And it wasn't just the old plumbing or the creaky floorboards. I felt it deep in my bones, a palpable, malevolent presence. I had to know what was happening, and that meant uncovering the truth, no matter how terrifying it was. Over the next few weeks, the strange occurrences didn't stop. In fact, they seemed to get more intense, more deliberate, as if whatever was in the house knew I was paying attention, knew I was starting to question its secrets, and was responding to my defiance. I'd wake up to find objects subtly moved around the house. Nothing huge, nothing overtly dramatic. Just little things designed to unnerve, to undermine my sense of control. A favorite mug turned upside down on the kitchen counter, or a specific book from my study, one I'd been reading, placed neatly on my pillow. A silent, personal challenge. Once I found all the kitchen cabinet doors slightly ajar, as if someone had just walked through them casually, then left them for me to find. A taunting gesture. I tried, desperately, to convince myself I was just being paranoid, that I was merely adjusting to the unique sounds and quirks of an old house. Perhaps I was sleepwalking, doing these things myself, a subconscious manifestation of stress. The idea was unsettling, but still preferable to the alternative of a supernatural intruder. I even set up a small security camera in the living room, pointed meticulously at a stack of magazines I always kept perfectly aligned, hoping to catch myself in the act of rearranging them, to find a logical, scientific explanation for the bizarre events. But the camera footage, reviewing hours of stillness, showed nothing but empty space. The magazines would be subtly rearranged, or a picture frame tilted, without a single visible disturbance, no physical presence to explain it, only the eerie, unmoving quiet. That's when my carefully constructed logical explanations completely ran out. My scientific mind, which always demanded proof, now faced the undeniable. Deep down, a chilling certainty began to form. Something wasn't right. This wasn't me. This wasn't ghosts in the traditional sense. This was something else entirely. This was calculated. The feeling of being watched intensified significantly. It wasn't just at night anymore. I felt eyes on me during the day, a constant prickling sensation on the back of my neck, like an invisible gaze following my every move, even when I was alone in broad daylight. I started doing some deep research on the house, driven by a desperate, insatiable need for any information, any shred of understanding. I didn't want to jump to supernatural conclusions. I resisted it with every fiber of my being, but I had to know if anyone had ever experienced anything like this before. After digging through dusty old property records at the town hall, a tedious but necessary process that felt like piecing together a forgotten puzzle, and cautiously chatting with the longest living neighbors, I learned something profoundly unsettling. The house had been abandoned for years before I bought it. A surprisingly long time, over a decade. No one had lived there since the early 2000s. There were rumors, of course, whispers that followed the property like a shadow, vague stories about strange noises coming from the house when it was empty, about previous owners moving out abruptly after only a short time, without explanation, fleeing something unseen. But nothing concrete, just local legends and speculation, the kind of tales small towns tell about old, empty places to keep outsiders away, to protect themselves. No one had dared to actually buy it until I came along, a skeptical outsider armed with logic, but now facing the inexplicable. One night, after hearing another strange, distinct noise, a dull thud from the basement, followed by a faint, almost childlike whimper that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. I decided I couldn't just ignore it anymore. My carefully constructed logic, my entire scientific worldview, had crumbled. I grabbed a powerful flashlight, its beam a fragile shield against the encroaching darkness, my heart pounding, and headed into the basement. The area of the house that had always felt the eeriest to me, even before the weirdness started, a place of profound shadows. The wooden stairs creaked ominously beneath my feet as I descended into the damp, cold darkness. The air grew heavy, almost suffocating, as the door at the top of the stairs shut softly behind me, without a draft, a chilling sound of finality. I wasn't sure what I was expecting to find, but the silence down there, once I stopped moving, was profound. A thick, oppressive stillness, heavier than any I'd known. That's when I saw it, something that made my blood run cold. There, in the far corner of the basement, almost perfectly camouflaged against the rough, uneven stone wall, was a door. It was unlike any other door in the house, smaller, more archaic, covered in layers of dust and thick, ancient cobwebs, as if it had been deliberately hidden, forgotten by time and memory, sealed away. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic drum against my ribs, but curiosity, a desperate, undeniable need for answers, pushed me forward. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to turn back, but the intellectual challenge, the need to solve this impossible problem, propelled me onward. What could be behind that door? I moved closer, my flashlight beam struggling to cut through the oppressive gloom, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to writhe and stretch. The wood of the door was old, weathered, and warped, clearly hadn't been opened in years, perhaps decades. No visible lock, no handle. Just a faint outline where its edges met the rough stone of the wall. It felt wrong, like it shouldn't be there. A deliberate scar on the otherwise continuous wall, a break in the pattern. I took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to steady my trembling hands, and reached out. My fingers traced the outline, feeling the rough texture of the ancient wood, searching for a hinge, a latch, anything that would give way. It wouldn't budge. I pushed gently, then harder, pressing my shoulder against it, putting my weight into it. But it was solid, unyielding, as if it were part of the very bedrock of the house, a seamless part of the foundation. Frustration mingled with the fear, forming a cold, hard knot in my stomach. I knew this door, this hidden space, was connected. All the strange noises, the bone-chilling cold, the unsettling whispers, the objects subtly moved. It had to be coming from here, the epicenter of the bizarre occurrences, the source of my torment. I noticed a small, almost imperceptible crack in the stone wall next to the door. It looked like someone had tried to patch it up, clumsily, years ago. But the work was shoddy, leaving a telltale fissure, a weakness. I ran my fingers along it, feeling the rough edges, and then a tiny give, a slight indentation. I pressed harder, my finger digging into the crevice, and a small section of the stone seemed to shift inward, clicking softly, mechanically. It was a lever, a hidden mechanism, cleverly concealed, a forgotten piece of engineering. My heart leaped with a sudden, desperate hope, a surge of adrenaline. With renewed determination, fueled by a mixture of terror and a burning need to know, to understand, I pushed the loose stone with all my might. There was a low, grinding sound, a faint, mechanical click that echoed loudly in the confined space, and then, slowly, agonizingly, the hidden door creaked inward, a slow, deliberate groan, like a sigh from the house itself. As I pushed it open further, A wave of cold, stagnant air rushed out, carrying with it a faint, unsettling scent, like damp earth, decaying wood, and something profoundly old and forgotten, something that had been sealed away for far too long, festering in the darkness. The room beyond was pitch black, a void that swallowed my flashlight beam whole, making it useless. But I knew, with a chilling certainty, something was in there. Something that had been hidden for years, perhaps decades, waiting. The air in this newly revealed space grew even heavier, colder, the silence more profound, more absolute than in the rest of the basement. A chilling sense of dread washed over me, a foreboding that tightened its icy grip around my chest. This wasn't just an empty room. This was a burial ground of secrets, a place where time itself seemed to have stopped, where the past was preserved in darkness. As I stepped into the hidden room, the air grew even heavier, almost suffocating, thick with the scent of forgotten time and decaying secrets. My flashlight beams struggled to cut through the oppressive darkness, barely illuminating the immediate space around me, making shadows dance and stretch in terrifying ways. But even in the gloom, my eyes adjusted, and I could make out the outlines of old, forgotten furniture. Dust-covered chairs, a small, overturned table, and something that looked eerily like an old, intricately carved wooden chest, half buried under a shroud of thick cobwebs. My heart was pounding in my chest, a frantic drum against my ribs. But curiosity, a desperate, undeniable need for answers, pushed me forward. I had to see what was in here. I moved cautiously, my every step seeming to echo too loudly in the profound silence of this forgotten chamber, amplifying my own fear. The room felt strangely out of place, a time capsule preserved in perpetual darkness, untouched for years. As I bent down to examine the chest, I noticed something odd. It had no visible lock, no discernible latch, nothing to indicate a traditional way of opening it. But it was sealed shut with multiple layers of old, brittle packing tape, yellowed and cracked with age. It didn't make any sense. Why would someone go to such lengths to tape a chest closed like this? It suggested an urgent, desperate attempt to keep something in, or perhaps to keep something out, to forever conceal its contents. Without thinking, my fingers found a loose edge of the tape, and I began peeling it away. The sticky, tearing sound filling the oppressive silence, echoing unnervingly in the confined space. The wood of the chest creaked loudly as I lifted the heavy lid, a groan that seemed to come from the very core of the house itself, a sound of ancient protest. My breath hitched in my throat when I finally saw the contents. It wasn't treasure, not in any traditional sense. Inside were old, faded photographs, their faces indistinguishable in the dim light. Yellowed papers covered in looping, hurried script, and strange, unsettling objects wrapped in brittle, moth-eaten cloth. It was like someone had left behind fragmented pieces of their life, carefully packed away, then deliberately sealed, for years, decades even, perhaps hoping they would never be found, never disturb the world again. But then my eyes landed on something that made my blood run cold. A thick, leather-bound journal, its cover worn smooth with age, its pages bulging with various inserts, slips of paper, and even dried leaves pressed between them. I pulled it out cautiously, feeling an inexplicable unease creep over me, a sense of profound intrusion into something deeply personal and profoundly wrong. What was this? And why had it been hidden away like this, in a secret room sealed shut from the world? I opened the journal to the first page, my hands trembling so violently I could barely hold it steady as I read the words written in faded, almost illegible ink. It was a man's handwriting, neat, deliberate but frantic in places, the pen strokes digging deep into the paper as if written in sheer desperation. The entry began with a simple, chilling statement that sent shivers down my spine. They are watching. I don't know how much longer I have. The further I read, skimming pages, desperate for context, for any clue, the more my stomach sank, a cold, heavy knot forming in my gut. The entries were scattered, sometimes only a sentence or two, sometimes a full paragraph, but they were all chilling, each one painting a picture of escalating terror. The man wrote about strange occurrences, shadows moving at night, whispers in the walls, and the constant, suffocating feeling that someone or something was always watching him, always there. He described losing sleep, growing paranoid, the slow, insidious descent into madness as the house began to claim him, piece by agonizing piece, drawing him into its grasp. But it wasn't just that. As I read on, skipping pages, desperate for clues, for names, I discovered the man's name, John Harris. I froze. The last entry was dated just before the house had been abandoned, correlating perfectly with the decade of abandonment I'd discovered in property records. It ended with a frantic, desperate plea. I need to leave before they find me. I don't know what they want, but they're getting closer. I can't stay here. The journal fell from my hands, landing on the dusty floor with a soft thud. The room seemed to close in on me, the walls pressing in. John Harris. Was he the one who had lived here before me? And what was he running from? The answer felt like it was swirling in the thick, cold air, just beyond my grasp, waiting to be understood. I sat there in the dimly lit, suffocating room, staring at the journal lying on the dusty floor, its terrifying words echoing in my mind, a chilling testament to a hidden nightmare. John Harris, his name, now irrevocably tied to this chilling house, sent a profound, icy chill down my spine. Why had this man been living here? What had driven him to abandon everything? His possessions, his memories, his very identity, and seemingly vanish from his life, from existence itself. And why was his horrifying journal hidden in a secret room, sealed within the very house I now lived in, a house that still whispered his fears, still held his torment? As I stared at the worn pages, at the desperate, hurried handwriting, I couldn't help but feel that I was being drawn into something much bigger, much darker than I ever could have imagined. The house, with its strange noises and unsettling presence, suddenly felt less like a charming old home and more like an active, breathing prison, alive with a malevolent intent, a hunger. It was as if the walls themselves were holding on to something, a secret, a forgotten memory, a malevolent force that refused to stay buried, demanding to be seen. I carefully picked up the journal, as though handling it too roughly would wake up the ghost of its past owner. Or perhaps the entity it so desperately described, bringing it to life. My mind raced with possibilities, each one more horrifying than the last. Could it be that John's sudden disappearance was directly connected to the strange occurrences I had been experiencing? Could he have uncovered something truly terrible about the house before he left? Something that had driven him to such a frantic, desperate flight, to madness? Determined to get to the bottom of it, to find a logical explanation, I went back upstairs, needing light, needing to process this new, overwhelming information outside the claustrophobic confines of the hidden room. I began digging through the old property records I had found earlier in the attic, the ones that had been so vague about the house's previous inhabitants. I searched for anything that might explain John's connection to the house, his family, his life before the terror began, before he vanished. It wasn't long before I stumbled upon another name that sent my heart racing with a mix of dread and sudden, chilling recognition. Sarah Harris. She was listed as the previous owner of the house, along with John Harris, before it was officially abandoned and fell into disrepair in late 2005. The name Sarah stood out because it wasn't mentioned anywhere in John's journal, which seemed to focus solely on his own escalating terror, or in the other sparse documents I had initially seen. Sarah and John. Were they connected? Was she his wife? Or perhaps something more sinister, a deeper link to the house's dark history? I found more fragmented records on Sarah, official documents stating she had lived here with John, but then, inexplicably, there was no official trace of her after the house was abandoned. No forwarding address, no death certificate, no record of sale in her name, nothing that explained her fate. The strange thing was, no one in town seemed to know anything about her. When I pressed the elderly town clerk, he just shrugged, his eyes darting away, saying, "Some folks just disappear in old houses, son. Best not to ask too many questions." It was as if she had never existed, wiped from the town's collective memory, a ghost in plain sight. I dug deeper, meticulously piecing together the timeline. John had been living here with Sarah until late 2005, the exact year the house was officially abandoned and red-flagged by the town for unexplained structural issues and unsettling occurrences. Then, nothing. He had disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only his terrifying journal and a house that seemed to hold on to its secrets with a suffocating, malevolent grip. I knew, with a chilling certainty, I had to find out more about Sarah. Something told me that her disappearance was the key to everything, the missing piece of this horrifying puzzle. Until I knew the truth about her, the strange occurrences in my home, the whispers, the cold, the feeling of being watched. It all felt like a prelude to a truth I was rapidly approaching, a truth that might consume me next. The name Sarah Harris became my new obsession, a spectral figure I desperately needed to make real. John's journal hinted at a desperate struggle. His abrupt flight suggested a grave, immediate danger, a tangible threat. But where was Sarah? Why had she vanished without a trace, not just from the house but from all public records, from memory itself, as if she had never existed? I spent the next few days obsessively searching for any trace of her. I visited the local library, poring over dusty old town records, microfiche of ancient newspapers, hoping for anything that might shed some light on her life here. Perhaps an obituary, a birth announcement, a social notice. Anything that solidly placed her in this town before her unexplained disappearance. But the records were eerily quiet. The more I dug, the more I realized how little anyone seemed to know about her, or perhaps how unwilling they were to speak about her. The townspeople themselves barely spoke of the house. When I asked around, casually bringing up that old place on Elm Street, trying to seem innocent, people grew visibly uncomfortable, their eyes darting away, avoiding my questions, or changing the subject entirely with strained smiles. It was clear that the house had a dark reputation, a local legend of profound unease, but no one was willing to openly discuss it. It was like a collective agreement of silence, a conspiracy of quiet avoidance, a fear too deep, too ingrained to voice. Eventually, after countless dead ends and frustrating, evasive conversations, my relentless research led me to the edge of town, to an assisted living facility. There, I tracked down an old neighbor of the Harris family, someone who had lived across the street from them for decades, a witness to the unfolding mystery. The woman, Ms. Turner, was in her late 70s, sharp as a tack, her eyes holding a lifetime of memories, but frail. At first, she was incredibly hesitant to talk, her eyes widening with a flicker of raw fear when I mentioned the house and the Harris name. But after a little gentle coaxing and explaining my own terrifying experiences within the house, she began to tell me things I hadn't expected to hear. Her voice a low, raspy whisper, almost as if she feared being overheard by unseen ears. Sarah was a quiet woman, Ms. Turner said, her eyes darting nervously towards the window, then back to me, as if checking for something. A bit too quiet, perhaps. But John, he was different, restless. He'd always be out at night, coming and going at strange hours. I'd hear him arguing with her sometimes, hushed voices late in the evening. It was never a good situation between them. There was a darkness about him after a while, a haunted look in his eyes. But then one night, Sarah just disappeared. Completely. No one knew where she went. John said she left him, packed her bags, and just vanished. But I never bought it. She wouldn't just leave like that. Not the kind of woman she was. I felt a cold, hard knot tighten in my stomach, a sickening confirmation of my fears. This wasn't the first time I'd heard about a strange disappearance connected to the house. But the chilling truth was, there had been no official record of Sarah ever leaving town. Her name had simply vanished from all official records, from tax rolls, from Social Security, as if she had been erased from existence. It was profoundly chilling, a deliberate act of disappearance. Ms. Turner went on, her voice lowering even further to a barely audible whisper, leaning in closer as if the very walls of the assisted living facility had ears, as if the air itself was listening. People said there was something wrong with that house, dearie. Something off. Not a simple haunting, not a lingering spirit, but something else entirely. Something that made people want to leave, or never leave at all. John was obsessed with the place. He used to tell me that there was something inside the walls, something that wouldn't let him go. He was terrified of it, truly terrified. Her words sent a fresh, icy chill down my spine, confirming my deepest fears, validating every terrifying experience I'd had. Inside the walls? Could this be why I had been hearing those strange noises at night? Could the house itself be hiding something? Something sinister? Something truly malevolent? Something alive? Something with a will? My logical mind screamed for rational explanations, for a way to dismiss her as a confused old woman, for a scientific answer. But the sheer weight of her conviction, coupled with my own undeniable, terrifying experiences, was too much to ignore. "I've heard whispers over the years, honey," Miss Turner continued, her eyes wide with a deep-seated ancient fear. "But no one talks about it. No one. Everyone stays quiet because they're afraid. Afraid of it. Afraid that if they speak its name, it might come for them, might claim them too." That was when it hit me with a profound, terrifying clarity, a sickening realization. This wasn't just about ghosts. This wasn't just about an old, creaky house with a dark history. There was something deeper here, something far more dangerous, far more insidious, something that actively preyed on its inhabitants, consuming them. Sarah hadn't left willingly. She was connected to whatever dark presence lingered in the house, trapped by it, a prisoner within its very fabric. And John, he had been running from it for years, trying desperately to escape its insidious grasp, just as his journal frantically described, a battle he ultimately lost. My initial curiosity had turned into a terrifying, all-consuming reality. I thanked Miss Turner, my voice barely steady, leaving her with a sense of unease that lingered long after I drove away from the facility. I drove straight back to my house, compelled, needing to confront it, needing to understand what I was truly dealing with, to find a way out. The house loomed, silent and ominous under the setting sun, its windows like dark, unblinking eyes, watching. I stepped inside, the familiar silence now feeling heavy, charged with an unseen energy, a palpable anticipation. I made my way to the basement, to the hidden room, feeling an undeniable pull, a sense of destiny, or perhaps a trap. The moment I opened the hidden door, the cold, stagnant air rushed out, carrying with it the faint, unsettling scent I'd noticed before but now far stronger, almost sickening. I turned on my flashlight, its beam struggling to cut through the profound gloom, and that's when I saw it. A figure barely visible in the profound shadows, sitting motionless in an old wooden chair, shrouded in darkness. It was Sarah. Her face was pale, gaunt, her eyes hollow, but it was unmistakably her. The woman who had vanished years ago, now sitting in the eternal darkness of a secret room, trapped. "Sarah?" I whispered, my voice trembling, raw with disbelief. "But how?" "I thought you were gone. Everyone said you disappeared." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a strange mixture of profound sorrow and chilling resignation. "I never disappeared," she said, her voice a low, detached whisper, echoing eerily in the confined space. "I was always here, trapped, just like John, just like the house." My blood ran cold. The mystery was finally revealing itself, and it was far more horrifying than any ghost story. My heart stopped. Standing in the doorway of the dark, cold, and suffocating basement was a figure I still couldn't fully believe was real. There, bathed in the faint, flickering light from my trembling flashlight, was Sarah Harris, alive, or at least a horrifying semblance of her former self. The same woman whose name had haunted me for weeks, whose unexplained disappearance had puzzled the town for years, now stood before me. But how could she be here? How could she be standing in front of me after all this time, after being presumed vanished, a ghost story come to life? For a moment, neither of us moved. I was frozen in place, staring at her in disbelief, my mind struggling to process what my eyes were seeing, desperately trying to reconcile the impossible, the illogical. She looked older, far older than her years should have allowed. Her face worn, gaunt, a mere shadow of the vibrant woman I'd seen in old photographs. Yet, it was unmistakably her. She didn't speak. She just stood there watching me with cold, hollow eyes, a blankness that offered no comfort, no explanation, only an unnerving stillness, a profound emptiness. "Sarah?" My voice came out in a strangled whisper, barely audible in the profound silence, laden with a decade of unspoken questions, of a family's grief. "But how? I thought you were gone. Everyone said you disappeared. Where did you go?" She didn't answer at first. Instead, she took a slow, deliberate step into the room, and as she did, a profound, bone-deep chill filled the air, colder than anything I'd felt before, seeping into my very bones, into my marrow. I could feel the palpable presence of something dark swirling around us, pressing in, an invisible weight, suffocating. I wanted to run, to turn and flee into the relative safety of the main house, to escape this nightmare. But my legs wouldn't move, rooted to the spot by sheer terror. I couldn't tear my eyes away from her, mesmerized by the horror unfolding before me. "I never disappeared," she finally said, her voice low, raspy, and almost detached, as if speaking from a great distance, from across an insurmountable chasm of time and suffering. "I was always here, trapped, just like John, just like the house." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach, a sickening twist of dread, tightening with every beat of my frantic heart. What was she saying? Trapped? The house? Had she been hiding here all this time? A prisoner of this malevolent place? Was this some kind of twisted game? A cruel deception designed to break my sanity? "Trapped?" I repeated, my voice shaky, the words barely escaping my throat. "What do you mean? What's going on here? What's really happening in this house?" Her gaze softened for a moment, a fleeting flicker of something akin to pity or profound regret in her hollow eyes, a ghost of human emotion. But only for a second, before it turned cold and vacant again, the hollowness returning. "The house has a mind of its own," she said, her voice flat, ancient, almost as if reciting something she had learned long ago, a truth forced upon her by endless torment. "It doesn't just take people. It makes them part of it. It feeds off fear. It traps people in its walls, forcing them to stay. It controls them." I couldn't understand. This defied all logic, all reason, all scientific explanation. But why? Why did you leave everything behind? Why didn't you warn anyone? Your family, your friends? Sarah took another slow, deliberate step closer, her eyes dark and even more hollow, devoid of life, of light. "I couldn't warn anyone. I thought I could leave, but the house, it never lets you go. It finds you. I tried to run, but it found me. It took my mind, my soul. And now, it wants you too." Her words chilled me to the bone. It was like she was speaking from a place of eternal torment, as if she had been consumed by the house in a way I couldn't comprehend. I felt my breath catch in my throat as a horrifying realization dawned on me. Sarah wasn't just some woman who had vanished. She had been taken by the house. She stepped forward again, almost as if to touch my arm, and I recoiled instinctively, stumbling backward until my back hit the cold, damp stone wall of the basement. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible, filled with an ancient, profound sadness. "I didn't want this to happen, but now you're part of it too. You've woken it up." My knees buckled as the room seemed to close in on me, the oppressive weight growing unbearable, crushing the very air from my lungs. This wasn't just about a haunted house anymore. This wasn't some lingering spirit or residual energy. The house had a true presence. It had absolute malevolent control, and it was using us, pulling us into its twisted, endless game, feeding on our terror, our every desperate breath, growing stronger with each agonizing moment. "No!" I screamed, my voice raw and desperate, a futile cry against the encroaching darkness. I backed away until my back hit the cold, damp stone wall. "I won't be a part of this. I won't let it take me." But Sarah's hollow eyes were filled with an unnerving pity, a sad, knowing look that chilled me to the core. "You don't have a choice," she said softly, her voice echoing in the suffocating silence. "It's already begun." The air in the basement grew even colder, the shadows deeper, twisting into grotesque, mocking shapes on the walls, reaching out like phantom limbs. I felt a suffocating, crushing weight pressing down on me, like something invisible was wrapping itself around my chest, making it harder to breathe, squeezing the very life from my lungs. Sarah stood there, her expression filled with that strange mix of sympathy and resignation, as though she knew exactly what was coming and couldn't stop it, because she herself was powerless, a mere extension of the house's will. I took another desperate step back, my mind racing, screaming for a way out. This couldn't be real. I couldn't be standing here, facing a woman who was supposed to be a mystery, now revealed as a tormented prisoner. But Sarah's undeniable presence, the palpable coldness, the haunting fear in her eyes, was absolute. There was something dark here, something I had unknowingly awakened when I began digging into the house's terrifying past. "No," I whispered again, shaking my head vehemently, trying to convince myself this was some waking nightmare, a vivid hallucination. "This isn't real. It can't be. You're not the same. You've been here all along, haven't you? Trapped, just like John." Sarah's face flickered with a fleeting human emotion for just a moment, a hint of the woman she once was, and then it went cold and vacant again, the hollowness returning to her eyes. "Yes," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "I've been here, watching, waiting for someone to find the truth. But once you've opened the door, it's too late. The house won't let you go. It never does." I felt the ground shift beneath me, a sudden deep rumbling, like the very foundation of the house was groaning, waking up to claim its newest victim. The walls seemed to close in tighter, pressing on my chest, and I could hear the faint sound of whispering, distant but horrifyingly real, echoing through the room. I turned to Sarah, desperate for answers. "What do you mean by, 'it never lets you go'? What is this place?" Sarah's eyes darkened further, becoming like twin voids, portals to an ancient abyss. "It's not just a house," she said, her voice low, almost a growl, filled with a terrible, ancient knowledge that chilled me to my core. "It's alive, and when it finds someone, it doesn't stop. It makes them part of itself. You will become part of it too, just like me. Just like John." I recoiled, my mind spinning, struggling to comprehend such a monstrous claim, such an impossible reality. Part of it? I could feel something changing within me, a pervasive, chilling pull that I couldn't explain, a coldness seeping into my very bones, starting from my core and spreading outwards. The house had found me, just like it had found Sarah. I had unknowingly walked into its trap, and now it was too late to leave. Panic flared, hot and sharp, burning away all rational thought. But I fought it down. I needed to fight back. My thoughts were clear, a desperate, burning resolve, but my body felt heavy, weighed down by something I couldn't see or understand, a profound fatigue creeping into my limbs, making every movement an immense effort. I wasn't going to let this house take me. I wasn't going to let it swallow me whole, consume my mind and soul, like it had done to Sarah, like it had done to John, erasing their very existence. "No!" I shouted louder this time, my voice raw with defiance, clenching my fists until my nails dug into my palms, trying to anchor myself to reality. "I won't let you take me. I won't become part of this house. I'll fight it. I will fight it." Sarah's eyes softened for a brief second, a flicker of something human, perhaps even pity in their depths, but her expression quickly turned grim again, resigned to a fate she couldn't escape. "You can fight all you want," she said, her voice distant, thin, like an echo in a tomb. But it's too powerful. It won't let you go. It's already inside you. Her words chilled me to the bone, not just a metaphor, but a literal cold certainty that seeped into my very being. I turned and ran for the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest, a desperate, frantic drum. But before I could make it up the first creaking step, I felt a cold, unseen hand grip my ankle, an icy vice pulling me back, dragging me down with an immense, invisible force. I screamed, but no sound escaped my throat, swallowed by the oppressive, heavy air. I was trapped. The basement door slammed shut behind me with a deafening, final thud, the sound reverberating through the very foundations of the house, sealing my fate. I was locked in, consumed by the darkness, with Sarah's chilling words echoing in my mind, replaying over and over again, a tormenting mantra. It's already inside you. The air in the basement grew even colder, the shadows deeper, twisting into grotesque, mocking shapes on the walls. I felt a suffocating, crushing weight pressing down on me, like something invisible was wrapping itself around my chest, squeezing the very breath from my lungs. Every shadow in the room seemed to move with malevolent intent, stretching, reaching. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, no longer faint but a cacophony, a chorus of mocking voices, close, almost in my ear, as if the house was alive, feeding on my fear, reveling in my terror, consuming it. It was a sickening, maddening sound, a relentless assault on my sanity. I could feel my mind starting to fray at the edges, my thoughts fragmenting, my memories twisting, as if the walls themselves were closing in on my consciousness, suffocating them, pulling me into the endless darkness, into madness, into oblivion. I dropped to my knees, the cold concrete floor biting into my skin, the raw pain a desperate anchor to reality. Sweat poured down my face as I gasped for air, my lungs burning, and my mind raced, frantic, desperate for answers. What was happening to me? What was this house? And how was I going to escape? Then, through the haze of panic and pain, a thought hit me like a thunderbolt, a sudden, horrifying clarity that cut through the fear, freezing me to the core. What if it wasn't just the house that was trying to take me? What if there was something else, something far more sinister, far more ancient, far more intelligent, lurking beneath the surface, a true intelligence behind the walls, pulling the strings, orchestrating everything? Something that could not only consume me, but take absolute control of me, possess my very being, twisting my consciousness, erasing my identity, just like it had taken control of Sarah, just like it had consumed everything around me, twisting souls into its own grotesque image, adding them to its collection, to its unending torment. Suddenly, I heard it again, the faintest sound, like a whisper, but not from anywhere near me, not from Sarah, not from the walls. It was coming from deeper, from within the very fabric of the house, from the ancient earth beneath my feet. A low, guttural hum that vibrated through my bones, shaking me to my core. I pressed my ear to the cold, damp surface of the basement wall, my breath ragged, my heart pounding, the whispering growing louder, more distinct, more focused, coalescing into coherent words within my mind. And then I heard it clearly, directly in my mind. Not just a whisper, but a direct, chilling thought, a voice that was both alien and sickeningly familiar, a part of me and yet not me. Join us, become part of us. You always were. This is your destiny. The words sent an icy, agonizing chill down my spine, piercing my very soul, leaving me breathless. Join us? Become part of us? What did that mean? What did it want? I stumbled back, my heart racing, a dizzying sense of disorientation washing over me as the full, horrifying realization hit me. The house wasn't just haunting me. It was trying to possess me. It wanted to turn me into one of its own, just like Sarah, just like John. It wanted to take me into its grip, into its dark, unyielding, eternal hold, to add my fear, my regret, my soul to its infinite, growing power. The whispering grew louder, more urgent, more demanding, a cacophony of unseen voices, a symphony of torment, as if the house was feeding off my fear, growing stronger with every beat of my terrified heart, reveling in my terror, consuming it. It was a sickening, maddening sound, a relentless assault on my sanity. I could feel my mind starting to fray at the edges, my thoughts fragmenting, my memories twisting, as if the walls themselves were closing in on my consciousness, suffocating them, pulling me into the endless darkness, into madness, into oblivion. I had to get out. I had to find a way to break free from this madness before it consumed me entirely, before I lost myself forever. But as I backed away from the wall, my movements clumsy, desperate, I stumbled over something in the darkness. My foot caught on an unseen object, and I fell hard, scraping my hands and knees against the cold, rough concrete floor. The pain was sharp, but secondary to the terror. When I looked up, through the haze of my blurred vision, I saw something that made my blood run colder than it had ever been. There, in the corner of the room, standing motionless in the dark, its form barely visible in the dim, flickering light from my dropped flashlight, was a figure. It wasn't Sarah. It wasn't John. It was something else. Something utterly alien, yet disturbingly familiar. The figure took a slow, deliberate step into the faint light, its form coalescing, solidifying, and for the first time I saw its face. The face that had been haunting me all along, the true source of all the evil in this house. It was my own face, but distorted, twisted, a monstrous reflection of my greatest fears, a grotesque mirror of my own potential for darkness, and a terrifying glimpse into what I was becoming, what I was destined to be. I froze. The figure standing in front of me wasn't human, not in any sense of the word. It was a grotesque, twisted reflection of myself, a shadow, an empty form cloaked in pure, inky darkness, constantly shifting, flickering at the edges of my vision. It had the shape of a person, but its eyes were hollow, bottomless black holes, voids that seemed to draw in all light, all color, all hope, consuming everything they touched, leaving only emptiness behind. My breath hitched in my throat as I stared at it, utterly paralyzed, unable to move, unable to even scream. The thing slowly moved toward me, its presence suffocating, draining the very air from the room, making it thin and cold, biting. Every step it took seemed to send ripples through the oppressive atmosphere, making the shadows writhe and dance, stretching, reaching for me, trying to bind me. I could feel the room closing in even more, as though the walls were reacting to the thing's approach, contracting, constricting around me with every frantic beat of my heart, squeezing the life out of me, forcing my submission. I tried to scream again, but my voice was trapped inside my throat, frozen in place, a silent scream of pure terror. My body refused to obey my commands, a statue of pure, unadulterated fear rooted to the spot. I was completely paralyzed, as though the very air had solidified around me, holding me in place, a prisoner of my own terror, unable to break free. I could only watch, a horrified spectator, as the figure stepped closer, its cold, hollow eyes never leaving mine, piercing into my very soul, stripping away every layer of my being, revealing the raw essence of my fear. "You were always meant to be here," it whispered, its voice distant, unsettling, a chorus of voices from across time and space, echoing from every corner of the room, from within the very walls, from the depths of my own mind. The voice wasn't just coming from its mouth, it felt like it was coming from inside my head, a thought that was both mine and utterly alien, a parasitic intrusion, an inescapable truth. Just like the others, just like Sarah, just like John. "You are part of the house now. You are one of us." I tried to fight the growing dread inside me, to resist the insidious truth, to claw my way back to sanity, to reject the horrifying reality. "What do you want from me?" I managed to whisper, the words trembling on my lips, barely audible, a desperate plea in the face of insurmountable evil. The figure tilted its head, a grotesque parody of curiosity, as if it was amused by my fear, by my futile struggle, enjoying my torment, savoring every drop of my despair. "You were curious. You wanted to know. You sought the truth hidden behind the walls, didn't you? You pulled the thread. You opened the door. Now you know too much, and the price of knowledge is yourself." I felt something cold and clammy crawl up my spine, seeping into my very bones, an icy dread that turned my blood to slush as its words sunk in, echoing the frantic, terrified scribbles in John's journal. My curiosity had led me here. The very thing I thought was just an old house had turned out to be a living nightmare, a prison, a malevolent force that preyed on those who ventured too close to its secrets, binding them, consuming them, becoming one with them. And now, I was part of it. There was no way out, no escape. The truth had found its newest victim, and that victim was me. I knew I had to make a choice, a desperate, final stand against the impossible. I could surrender, let the house claim me, let it swallow me whole, body and soul, like it had Sarah and John, becoming another faceless whisper in its eternal walls, another source of its malevolent power. Or I could fight back, even if it meant facing something far darker, far more ancient, far more powerful than I could ever comprehend, something that defied all logic and reason, a primal force of evil that transcended understanding. I gathered every ounce of strength I had left, every shred of defiance, every burning ember of my will to live, and with a guttural roar, a desperate cry of rebellion, I pushed myself up off the cold concrete floor. "No," I whispered, my voice raw but gaining strength, cutting through the insidious whispers that tried to claim my mind, that tried to break me, that tried to convince me to give in. "I won't be part of this. I won't let you control me." The figure didn't respond. It only stood there, watching me with its empty gaze, its distorted face a mocking reflection of my own fear, a silent challenge, as if waiting for me to collapse under the crushing weight of my terror, to give in to the inevitable. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. Let it win. In that moment, something inside me snapped. Not from fear, but from a desperate, primal surge of will. A surge of unexpected energy coursed through me, hot and burning, invigorating my limbs, and with it, the unyielding will to fight, to survive, to defy the impossible, to break free. I turned and ran, ignoring the whispers that followed me, mocking, taunting, trying to drag me back. The walls seemed to close in as I sprinted towards the stairs, the darkness itself trying to envelop me, to pull me back into its endless embrace, to reclaim its property, The basement door was still locked, a solid barrier between me and freedom, but I didn't care anymore. I had to get out. I had to escape the suffocating grip of whatever malevolent entity was living in this house, before it consumed me entirely, before I lost myself forever, before I became another statistic in its long, horrifying history. I slammed my shoulder against the door, again and again, pouring all my desperate strength into each blow. The wood splintered, the lock groaned, but it held, mocking my efforts. Panic flared again, raw and sharp, but I pushed harder, fueled by a pure, unadulterated rage, by the thought of what I would lose, what I had already lost. I threw myself at the door one last time, a desperate, final act of defiance. There was a deafening crack. The lock gave way with a metallic screech, and the heavy door flew open, revealing the blessed, stale air of the hallway. I stumbled into the hallway, gasping for breath, the cool, stale air hitting my face like a blessing, a taste of fleeting freedom. Behind me, the house groaned and creaked, the sound of something immense and furious chasing me, growing louder by the second, its anger echoing through the walls, through the very foundation of the house, a hungry roar. But I didn't stop. I ran, not looking back, pushing past every barrier, every unseen wall, every phantom hand that seemed to reach for me, until I finally reached the front door, the ultimate symbol of escape. I flung it open, the old wood protesting with a loud shriek, and stepped outside, gasping for air, the cold night air hitting my face like a slap, a brutal, invigorating reminder of reality. I was free. I had escaped, or so I thought. As I turned around to look at the house, my heart still hammering in my chest, my breath ragged, I saw something that made my blood run colder than it had ever been. The windows, once dark and lifeless, were now glowing with a faint, unnatural, pulsing light, like malevolent eyes watching me, judging me forever. The house was watching me, waiting for me to return. It had let me go for now, but it was far from over. I could feel its presence, its immense power still lingering, still waiting. I stood frozen on the porch, my heart hammering in my chest, a frantic drum against my ribs as I stared at the house. The faint, unnatural glow in the windows sent a fresh, icy chill through my bones, and the raw fear that had been creeping beneath the surface now came rushing back with full, suffocating force. I thought I had escaped. I thought I had broken free from whatever ancient, malevolent force haunted that place. But standing there, looking at the house, with its glowing, watching eyes, I realized that physically leaving wasn't enough. The house wasn't done with me. It wanted me to come back. It wanted me to return, just like it had done to Sarah, just like it had done to John, drawing them back into its insidious embrace, binding them to its will, absorbing them into its eternal torment. I could feel it, the way the house was calling me back, pulling me in with an unseen, undeniable force, a magnetic, inescapable draw. I could feel its presence, its immense cold grip tightening around my mind, the walls of my own sanity seeming to close in again, trapping me even out here in the open air, a prisoner of its lingering power, unable to truly escape. I took a desperate step backward, ready to turn and run, to flee into the night, to escape this unending nightmare. But then something stopped me. A voice, a soft, faint voice, distinct from the house's whispers, yet unsettlingly familiar, that seemed to be calling my name from the depths of the shadows, from the very air around me. "Come back," it whispered. A haunting, melancholic sound, filled with an ancient sorrow, a profound longing. I shook my head violently, trying to ignore it, trying to break free from its insidious call, to reject its power. But the voice, the whisper, grew louder, more insistent, more desperate, a chorus of familiar voices now joining in, surrounding me. Come back. You can't escape. It's too late. You are one of us now. You always were. My stomach turned, a sickening lurch, as I slowly, involuntarily, turned back toward the house. I wanted to run. I had to run. Every fiber of my being screamed for flight, for salvation. But I couldn't shake the terrifying feeling that something was waiting for me inside. Something I had to face. Something that now felt inextricably linked to me. A part of my very being. A shadow I couldn't outrun. I couldn't just walk away anymore. It was too late. The truth I'd uncovered had branded me. I took a deep, shuddering breath, a last desperate attempt to steady myself, and turned back toward the house, my feet moving against my will, compelled by an unseen force, by the whispers that now echoed in my own mind, my own thoughts. Every instinct screamed at me to turn and flee, but I couldn't. The front door, which had once been closed to me, now stood wide open, a gaping maw inviting me in, beckoning me back into the darkness, into its eternal embrace. I stepped inside, my heart pounding with every heavy, reluctant step, the cold air hitting me like a physical blow. The air inside the house was thick with something ancient, something unspeakably old and powerful. The walls seemed to hum with a malevolent life, and the air was so cold it felt like it could freeze you from the inside out, turning your blood to ice. Every room I passed seemed to grow darker, more oppressive, the shadows lengthening, writhing, as if responding to my presence, welcoming me. But I pressed on, compelled, following the undeniable pull, the terrifying feeling that I was being drawn toward something that had been waiting for me, specifically, all along, waiting to consume me entirely. When I reached the basement door, I hesitated. The same door I had fought to escape from just hours ago. The same door that had led me into this waking nightmare. It stood in front of me, a dark void, as if mocking me, daring me to open it once more. I took the handle in my hand, and this time, it didn't creak or groan as it had before. It opened easily, silently, as though it had been waiting for me, patiently, for years, centuries even. I stepped into the basement, my flashlight beam flickering erratically in the profound darkness. The shadows loomed, grotesque and menacing, and the air was heavier now, thick with an overwhelming dread. And then, I saw it. The thing that had been waiting for me, the true source of all the horror. It wasn't Sarah, it wasn't John, it was something far more ancient, far more terrifying. It was the house itself, a vast, swirling vortex of dark, pulsating energy at the center of the basement, its form shifting, twisting, coalescing from the very shadows and dust, a living, breathing entity. And it had been waiting for me to return, to complete its collection, to add me to its unending torment. It was the prison for souls, and now I was its newest inmate. As I stood there in the basement, paralyzed by the horrifying spectacle, the shadows seemed to grow darker, deepening into impenetrable voids, and the temperature dropped even further, an unbearable, bone-chilling cold that seemed to seep into my very soul, turning my blood to ice. My breath came out in ragged, frosty clouds, and my heartbeat echoed in my ears, a frantic drum against the suffocating silence. I could feel the immense weight of something, no, of someone watching me, an overwhelming presence that pressed down, pinning me to the spot, making it impossible to move, to breathe. The walls around me creaked and groaned, not just the sounds of an old house settling, but as if the house itself was alive, shifting, breathing, groaning with an ancient predatory hunger that echoed through the very foundations of the earth. The air felt thick with an overwhelming, malevolent presence that defied all explanation, all reason, all sanity. I moved cautiously through the basement, my flashlight beam flickering erratically, fighting against the encroaching darkness as I scanned the room, desperately searching for an escape that didn't exist. That's when I saw it. On the far side of the room, near the wall, was an old wooden chair, and sitting in it was a figure. It was shrouded in darkness, its features barely visible, a shadowy, indistinct form that twisted and writhed at the edges of my perception. But I could feel its presence, cold and heavy, like a profound weight pressing down on me, an echo of the entity before me. A terrifying confirmation. I approached slowly, my legs trembling with fear. Each step a monumental effort, each breath a desperate gasp. The chair creaked loudly under the weight of the figure as I drew nearer. It wasn't Sarah. It wasn't John. It was something else. Something that had been living in the house, lurking in the darkness, waiting for someone to finally uncover its truth, to complete its sinister purpose. As I stepped closer, the figure slowly, unnaturally, turned toward me, its form coalescing, solidifying from the shadows, becoming undeniably clear. And for the first time I saw its face. It was me. Not exactly, but enough for me to recognize the cold, empty eyes that stared back at me, devoid of life, filled with an ancient, chilling knowledge, a mirror of my own despair. My heart skipped a beat, then pounded with terrifying force. The figure was a twisted, grotesque version of me, its face contorted in agony, a silent scream frozen in time, as if it had been trapped here for far too long, perpetually suffering, perpetually aware. I stumbled back, gasping for breath, the flashlight trembling in my hand, threatening to fall, to plunge me into absolute darkness. "What is this?" I whispered, my voice barely audible, a thin thread of sound in the oppressive silence. "Who are you?" The figure spoke, its voice a guttural, haunting whisper, a chorus of tormented souls, echoing from across the vast emptiness of the room, from within the very walls, from the depths of my own mind. A voice that was both mine and utterly alien. I'm the one who was left behind, the one who was never meant to leave, the true owner of this house. And now, you belong to me. I couldn't comprehend what I was hearing. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice shaky, desperate for an answer that made sense, any sense at all, to pierce the veil of madness. "Who are you? What are you?" The figure slowly stood, its movements unnatural and jerky, like a marionette controlled by unseen, malevolent strings. It took a step toward me, and with each step, the air grew colder, colder than any cold I had ever experienced, a cold that seeped into my very marrow. The shadows seemed to stretch and swirl around it, swallowing the light from my flashlight, making it dimmer, weaker, as if draining its very essence, its life force. "I was part of the house before you ever were," the figure said, its voice hollow, ancient, a chilling echo, filled with an unimaginable age and power. "I was Sarah's secret. I was the one she left behind, the one her family covered up, leaving her here to be forgotten. She brought me here. She sealed me here. She was my jailer. And John, he tried to free me. He almost succeeded. But the house, it had other plans. I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me as the horrifying truth began to sink in, twisting my stomach into a cold, hard knot. The house wasn't just haunted by spirits. It was alive with the remnants of everyone who had lived here, everyone who had been consumed by it, every soul that had been broken by its power. The darkness that had taken Sarah, John, and now me, was a living, sentient entity that fed on fear, on secrets, on guilt, on the souls of those who dared to uncover the truth, binding them to its will, absorbing them into its very fabric. It was a parasitic intelligence, ancient and insatiable, constantly growing, constantly consuming. I turned and ran, my mind racing, screaming for escape. I had to get out. I had to escape this nightmare before it consumed me completely, before I lost myself forever, before I became another faceless part of its endless torment. But as I reached the stairs, I felt the darkness closing in, pulling me back toward the center of the basement, a powerful, invisible force dragging me down. I turned around, frantically scanning the room, but the figure was gone. The room was empty, and yet I could still feel it, the house, watching me, its immense, cold presence pressing in, waiting for me to fall deeper into its grasp. It was too late. I had uncovered the truth, and now there was no turning back. The decision had been made for me. The choice had been taken from my hands. I was trapped. The air in the basement grew even colder, the shadows deeper, twisting into grotesque, mocking shapes on the walls. I felt a suffocating, crushing weight pressing down on me, like something invisible was wrapping itself around my chest, squeezing the very breath from my lungs. Every shadow in the room seemed to move with malevolent intent, stretching, reaching. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, no longer faint but a cacophony, a chorus of mocking voices close, almost in my ear, as if the house was alive, feeding on my fear, reveling in my terror, consuming it. It was a sickening, maddening sound, a relentless assault on my sanity. I could feel my mind starting to fray at the edges, my thoughts fragmenting, my memories twisting, as if the walls themselves were closing in on my consciousness, suffocating them, pulling me into the endless darkness, into madness, into oblivion. I dropped to my knees, the cold concrete floor biting into my skin, the raw pain a desperate anchor to reality. Sweat poured down my face as I gasped for air, my lungs burning and my mind raced frantic, desperate for answers. What was happening to me? What was this house? And how was I going to escape? Then, through the haze of panic and pain, a thought hit me like a thunderbolt, a sudden, horrifying clarity that cut through the fear, freezing me to the core. What if it wasn't just the house that was trying to take me? What if there was something else? Something far more sinister, far more ancient, far more intelligent, lurking beneath the surface, a true intelligence behind the walls, pulling the strings, orchestrating everything. Something that could not only consume me but take absolute control of me, possess my very being, twisting my consciousness, erasing my identity, just like it had taken control of Sarah, just like it had consumed everything around me, twisting souls into its own grotesque image, adding them to its collection, to its unending torment. Suddenly I heard it again, the faintest sound, like a whisper, but not from anywhere near me, not from Sarah, not from the walls. It was coming from deeper, from within the very fabric of the house, from the ancient earth beneath my feet. A low, guttural hum that vibrated through my bones, shaking me to my core. I pressed my ear to the cold, damp surface of the basement wall. My breath ragged, my heart pounding, the whispering growing louder, more distinct, more focused, coalescing into coherent words within my mind. And then I heard it clearly, directly in my mind. Not just a whisper, but a direct, chilling thought. A voice that was both alien and sickeningly familiar, a part of me and yet not me. Join us. Become part of us. You always were. This is your destiny. The words sent an icy, agonizing chill down my spine, piercing my very soul, leaving me breathless. Join us? Become part of us? What did that mean? What did it want? I stumbled back, my heart racing, a dizzying sense of disorientation washing over me as the full, horrifying realization hit me. The house wasn't just haunting me, it was trying to possess me. It wanted to turn me into one of its own, just like Sarah, just like John. It wanted to take me into its grip, into its dark, unyielding, eternal hold, to add my fear, my regret, my soul to its infinite, growing power. The whispering grew louder, more urgent, more demanding, a cacophony of unseen voices, a symphony of torment, as if the house was feeding off my fear, growing stronger with every beat of my terrified heart, reveling in my terror, consuming it. It was a sickening, maddening sound, a relentless assault on my sanity. I could feel my mind starting to fray at the edges, my thoughts fragmenting, my memories twisting, as if the walls themselves were closing in on my consciousness, suffocating them, pulling me into the endless darkness, into madness, into oblivion. I had to get out. I had to find a way to break free from this madness before it consumed me entirely, before I lost myself forever. But as I backed away from the wall, my movements clumsy, desperate, I stumbled over something in the darkness. My foot caught on an unseen object, and I fell hard, scraping my hands and knees against the cold, rough concrete floor. The pain was sharp, but secondary to the terror. When I looked up, through the haze of my blurred vision, I saw something that made my blood run colder than it had ever been. There, in the corner of the room, standing motionless in the dark, its form barely visible in the dim, flickering light from my dropped flashlight, was a figure. It wasn't Sarah. It wasn't John. It was something else. Something utterly alien, yet disturbingly familiar. The figure took a slow, deliberate step into the faint light, its form coalescing, solidifying, and for the first time, I saw its face. The face that had been haunting me all along, the true source of all the evil in this house. It was my own face, but distorted, twisted, a monstrous reflection of my greatest fears, a grotesque mirror of my own potential for darkness, and a terrifying glimpse into what I was becoming, what I was destined to be. I bolted upright, gasping for air, the chilling words, "Welcome home," echoing in my mind. But I wasn't in the basement anymore. I was back in my own bed, tangled in the familiar sheets, sunlight streaming through the window. Was it a dream? A nightmare so vivid it felt real. I sat up, my heart still hammering in my chest, my breath ragged, the terror from the basement, the chilling encounter with my own distorted reflection, the suffocating presence of the house. It all felt intensely, horrifyingly real. I scrambled out of bed, my legs trembling, and rushed to the bathroom mirror. My reflection stared back, my own face, but for a terrifying moment, I saw the vacant eyes, the contorted features of the figure in the basement. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to shake off the lingering dread, but the image persisted. The house. It hadn't let me go. It had changed me. The next few days were a blur of unease and paranoia. I tried to go about my normal routine, But every creak of the floorboards, every flickering light, sent shivers down my spine. The whispers weren't just in the walls anymore. They were in my head, soft, insidious, calling my name, urging me back to the basement, to the hidden room. I avoided the basement. I avoided that side of the house entirely, as if that could sever the connection. But the connection was internal now. It was inside me, a cold, spreading presence that I couldn't escape. I noticed subtle changes in myself. Moments of extreme coldness, sudden urges to rearrange objects in strange patterns, a heightened sensitivity to the house's sounds. Sometimes, when I looked in the mirror, my eyes seemed to hold a flicker of that hollow, ancient gaze I'd seen in the basement. I tried to rationalize it. Stress, trauma, sleep deprivation. But deep down, I knew. The house hadn't just haunted me. It had marked me. It had become part of me, just as it had become part of Sarah and John. I was forever connected to its malevolent energy. I couldn't talk to anyone about it. Who would believe me? My friends and family would think I was losing my mind. They would see me as a victim of a breakdown, not as a survivor of something truly supernatural. I was alone in this, the ultimate loneliness, living with a secret that was slowly consuming me from the inside out. I stopped sleeping well. The dreams were vivid, terrifying glimpses into the house's past. Flashes of John's desperation, Sarah's torment. I saw others, too. Faces I didn't recognize, all trapped, all screaming in silent agony. They were the others, the house's previous victims, now part of its collective consciousness, and I was slowly becoming one of them. The house wasn't just my home, it was my captor, and I was its newest extension. I tried to fight the urges, the whispers, the chilling presence that grew stronger each day. But it was like fighting myself. The more I resisted, the more drained I felt, the more it pulled me in. I realized then that escaping the basement was not escaping the house. The house had simply changed its tactics. It was a slow, insidious consumption. Sarah's chilling words echoed in my mind, a tormenting mantra. You're not free, you know. You'll never be free. It was as if they had branded themselves into my thoughts, replaying over and over again, a constant, insidious reminder of my new reality. It was hard to believe that a house, a mere structure, could have such a profound hold on me. But deep down, I knew she was right. Even though I had walked out, I hadn't truly left it behind. The connection was internal, a chilling presence that now resided within me. The next few days were a blur of intense unease and pervasive paranoia. I stayed with a friend, trying desperately to clear my head, trying to make sense of everything I had experienced, to rationalize the impossible. I tried to push the terrifying memories out, to compartmentalize the horror, but they kept creeping back, insidious and relentless. The whispers, the bone-deep cold, the suffocating feeling of being watched. It was all so real, so undeniable. And the strange thing was, I couldn't seem to escape it. It wasn't just in the house anymore. It was in my dreams, vivid and terrifying, filled with the tormented faces of John and Sarah. It was in the unsettling shadows of the street, in the quiet corners of every room I entered, in the empty spaces between the moments of my day. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. The house, and Sarah, and the terrifying, malevolent presence that lingered in the walls, now a part of my own consciousness. It had become part of me, just as much as it had been a part of them, its previous victims. I couldn't stop thinking about that journal, about the desperate words written in it, the ones that spoke of something dark, something alive. something that consumed. I had thought that confronting the house, opening those hidden doors, would somehow set me free, would provide closure. But now I wasn't so sure. I had awakened something far beyond my comprehension, something that could never be put back in the box, and I wasn't sure if I had the strength to keep running from it, or if I even could run anymore. I started avoiding people, keeping to myself, isolating myself from anyone who might notice the subtle changes, who might ask questions about the house or what had happened. My friends, my family, they didn't understand. They couldn't. How could they? What could I possibly say that would make them believe me? That wouldn't make them think I was losing my mind? No one would ever understand what it felt like to be hunted, to be slowly consumed by something like that, something that wasn't just a ghost, but a living, breathing entity that now resided within my very soul. One afternoon, consumed by a desperate, inescapable compulsion, I decided I had to face it, one last time. I had to go back to the house. I drove there in a haze, my mind a storm of conflicting emotions, not really knowing what I expected to find, but I knew I couldn't keep living in fear. I had to know what the house wanted from me. I had to confront it head-on or succumb completely. When I arrived, the house looked the same. Quiet, still, almost empty, a facade of normalcy. But it wasn't empty. I could feel it, just beneath the surface, its immense cold power humming. The energy was different, more calm, as if it was waiting for me, patiently, deliberately, watching me. I stood there, staring at the house for a long, agonizing time, before I finally walked up the front steps, my legs heavy, compelled by an unseen force. The front door was still open, just like it had been the night I left, an ominous invitation. I pushed it open further, half expecting to hear the whispers again, to feel the cold embrace. But there was only silence. The profound, unsettling silence of something waiting. I stepped inside, and for the first time I wasn't afraid. Fear had been replaced by a chilling resignation, a grim determination. I had already been through the worst of it. The house wasn't going to win. Not completely. I stepped deeper into the house, my footsteps echoing unnaturally loud through the empty rooms, a sole figure in a vast, malevolent space. The silence was almost suffocating, as if the house was holding its breath, waiting for something, waiting for me to make the next move, to complete the inevitable. I could feel the immense weight of every step I took, but I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't hiding. This time, I was here for answers. I was here to face whatever it was that had taken over my life for so long, to stare it down, to understand my new reality. I walked through the familiar rooms, each one eerily familiar, yet filled with a strange emptiness. It was as if time had stopped the moment I left, frozen in the darkness that had swallowed the house. I passed the staircase, the kitchen, and the basement door, the door that had been the entry point for everything that had happened. I could still feel the cold air from when I had opened it, the chill that had seeped into my bones. Finally, I reached the living room, the place where I had spent so many nights, the place where I had felt safe. Now, it felt like a ghost of what it once was. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was angry, angry at myself for letting fear control me, angry at the house for taking everything. As I stood there in the middle of the room, I felt it again. The pull, the pressure, the presence of something watching me. But this time, I wasn't alone. I wasn't just facing the house. I was facing myself. The parts of me that had been too afraid to confront the truth, too afraid to face what had been hiding in the dark. That's when I heard it. The whisper. The voice that had haunted me since the day I moved in. But this time, it wasn't in my ear. It was inside my mind, clearer than ever before. "You are part of it," the voice said, cold and empty. "You always were." The room seemed to swirl around me, the walls closing in again, the shadows growing longer. But this time I stood my ground. I wasn't going to let it take me. "No," I said, my voice firm, cutting through the whispering. "I'm not a part of this anymore. You can't have me." The house seemed to groan, as if in protest, the air thickening with the weight of something ancient and alive. But I didn't flinch. I stepped forward, my eyes locked on the walls that had once felt like they were closing in on me. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," I said, the words feeling stronger with each step. "I'm done running, and I'm done letting you control me." For a moment, the house fell silent. It was as if it was waiting for me to break, to give in to the fear that had kept me trapped for so long. But I didn't. I stood there unwavering, refusing to let the house take me any longer. And just like that, it stopped. The pressure in the room lifted. The whispers faded. The house, which had felt so alive with darkness, fell into a strange, unsettling stillness. It wasn't gone. Nothing was ever truly gone from this place. But I had taken back control. The house no longer held me in its grip. I was free. I walked out of the house one last time, my heart finally calm. The house wasn't going to haunt me anymore. It might still be out there, lurking in the shadows, but it wouldn't own me. I had faced it. I had faced my own fear, and I had won. After a few months of feeling truly free, I decided to sell the house. I listed it, and within weeks it was under contract. A young couple, full of dreams, just like I was. I watched them sign the papers, feeling a pang of guilt, but mostly relief. As they drove away, keys in hand, I glanced back at the house one last time. And there it was. A faint, unnatural glow in the windows, the very same glow that had haunted me. My heart froze. But it wasn't the house's glow. It was coming from my own eyes. A cold smile spread across my face. The truth was, I hadn't broken free. The house didn't win. I won. I was the new house. I had consumed it, just as it had consumed others. I was the culmination. I was the owner. And now, I was ready for new guests. If this story left you speechless, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life confessions. What do you think about the true nature of evil? Do you think some places are just alive? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're house hunting, maybe check the attic for old journals. You never know what you might find.